welcome to Leaders of Tomorrow, India's only daily television platform for small businesses. We bring you the right information to empower you, the SME entrepreneur. I'm Sunanda Jayaseelan. On today's show, we're breaking down the opportunities and challenges for you, the SME entrepreneur. When it comes to the electric vehicle space, I had the biggest experts and entrepreneurs in this space coming together on one panel to discuss what you, the entrepreneur, should know about tapping into those opportunities here. Take a listen. Thank you all very much for being with us here tonight, really talking about the opportunities in the electric vehicle space. I know there's a lot to talk about, but maybe we can get the ball rolling by asking both the entrepreneurs on the panel. And maybe I can quickly start by asking Shreyas and Akash if you can talk about what it is you do and very briefly, you know, what the initial couple of days were like as entrepreneurs. Let me come to you first, Shreyas.
On a personal note, you know, I've always been interested in the automobile space from a very young age. And you know, when I have a background in embedded systems, and when I moved back to India, you know, it was always apparent to me that I wanted to do something that would create long-term sustained impact for the economy. So the EV space kind of, you know, seemed like a very natural fit for me. Coming to what I'm doing today, so in Micelio, we broadly, you know, we're doing two things. First part is a C-stage fund with a corpus of 140 crores. And, you know, this is, you know, investors like to use the term patient capital. And the, you know, the EV technology definitely falls under that category because there's a long gestation period for this kind of technology. And, you know, as investors, but firstly as engineers, but also as investors, we understand that and we really think it'll be...
And you have a dedicated fund that really looks at this space.
Exactly.
Great. So we will come back and talk about funding. And let me come to you quickly, Akash.
I've worked for 11 years before trying to solve this big problem and have always been looking for what is that I can impact life of millions or billions of, you know, people out here. So, and this micro mobility right now, if you look at short distance, you know, when you're stuck at a metro station or when you're using a public, you know, transportation, going to the last mile has been a major pain. While, you know, the cabs and many other people have solved the long distance, short commute still was a major problem. That's how, you know, Mobycy, you know, came into the picture. And then when we started solving it, we saw that EVs are the best way to solve it because, you know, the unit economics work, the scooter form factor or the different form factors that we can create a disruption. And that is what, you know, now we are doing with Mobycy.
Okay, this question is open to everyone on the panel, but I will come to you first, Chetan, and talk about the fact that when we're talking about electric vehicles, we have to talk about the role of the government. The government has scaled back its initially set targets of 100% electric vehicles to about 30% now. Is that an opportunity or a challenge for an entrepreneur who's in this space?
Well, I think it's to look at more than a challenge and opportunity, right? So with electric mobility, 60% of the bill of material electric car is different from that of a gasoline car. So you're going to have new opportunities in motors, controllers, and chargers, and battery systems, connected technologies. A lot of it's also software powered, and so a large opportunity for India to get into these things, and for new entrepreneurs to look into it. Unlike engines of the past where someone needed 50 years of expertise in large companies, you've seen young companies in 5 years do a catch-up because it's not that anyone's got 30 years of experience in electric mobility. And so therefore it's easier for startups to probably look at this space on this area. So I think the opportunity there is huge. The second part is our oil infrastructure business would be 200 billion by 2030. That will be replaced a large portion with charging, battery swapping, and other technologies on energy and mobility and renewable energy. So there's two fields of what I look at, new technologies within the electric mobility space, technologies that are going to empower them in infrastructure. And a third, like some of the panelists here talked about, is the mobility space of shared mobility, which would link very quickly. So you're actually at points which are not just in one axis, you're going to be in three areas coming together. And that's a great time for entrepreneurs to look at it. From a government point of view, I mean, from 20 years of starting electric cars where policies were very negative. They've taken a 180 shift. You have today subsidies. Maybe there are some challenges around it. You have a lot of new things that have come out in the last year. States have embarked on their own policies. So it's a good timing, I would say. Still a lot to be done, but definitely a good position for entrepreneurs to take on a macro level of things that we have here and get there.
Okay, but let me get your opening comments as well, Naveen.
I'm glad what the government is talking about, so at least finally they've woken up to talk about electrification and how we are moving from IC and from polluting industries or polluting automobiles into the electric vehicles. There are certain challenges, of course, and those challenges exist at this point of time. But I'm pretty sure, just talking about it is one step in the right direction. Policies, no doubt there is a lot of work which is going into the policy making, but nevertheless there is still a lot of work to be done. So what's happening right now is there's a lot of work happening on the back end part of it, but is that actually creating the pull in the front end? That's not really begun to show in a very large manner at this point. So if we have to convert to the level that we are talking about, even that's 30% or 40% or 50% in the next 10 years, then the infrastructure, the supply chain, the whole ecosystem that needs to be created needs to be done now. We've been in this space for 10 years. We're already expanding very rapidly. So we believe that that conversion will happen. And once the ball starts rolling in that direction in the favor of EV, then it's going to be the radical shift that is going to begin to happen. Okay. The other thing is that, if you look at the pollution levels, for example, 14 of the top 20 most polluted cities in the world exist in India. Plus we've got oil, plus we've got cities which are highly polluted at this point of time. And EVs actually save you money at the end of the day. So they are an economical viable option to run on a day-to-day basis. The only issue that exists right now is your total cost of purchasing the vehicle. Your capex is higher than that of an IC in terms of the similar performance. But I see as the battery prices are dropping, and they have dropped 80% in the last 10 years, as they're dropping, there is going to be an inflection point where the batteries are going to be similar performance to that of fuel that we have at this point of time. The vehicles will make far more sense than what they do at this point of time. So EVs, inevitably, there is going to be a transition which happens, and that transition is going to be faster than what anybody's expecting.
Okay, so one thing that the three of you is definitely talking about is cost, and Deepak, I want to come to you on that and talk about the fact that cost, of course, is a major factor when it comes to demand of any kind. But one specific thing that I want to get your opinion on is the fact that CM, the industry body, for a while now has been pushing for taxation relief, some sort of taxation relief, at least for electric vehicles. Do you perhaps see that coming about anytime soon? What else would you like to see?
No, I think the broader question is how the cost will come down, and as Naveen already said, the biggest driver of cost of an electric vehicle is the battery cost, and that has come down by 80%, and I think it's currently at around $250 per kilowatt hour, and the expectations are that within next 3 to 5 years that should come down to close to 150, and if that happens, then the parity between the ICE, the internal combustion engine, and the electric vehicle will start to reach, and at least at a total cost of ownership level. And 2-3 years more down the line, even in terms of the purchase price, parity will come. So that's one thing which is definitely happening, and with time it will come. But what can accelerate it is two things from the government. One is the kind of subsidy government can provide. Sure. If you look at China, the level of subsidy on electric vehicle is as high as 50%, and that was one biggest driver for the kind of explosive growth China has seen in electric vehicles. In India, that level is still at 25-27%. So the good thing is government is thinking about it, but the bad thing is there's only so much government can do in terms of giving that kind of subsidy. The second thing, which coming back to your specific question on taxes, I think government has done some things in bits and pieces, like even bringing down the imports duty on components from 30% to 10-15%. But there is a lot more which can be done. So while that will not be good enough on a standalone basis, that combined with the falling battery prices and whatever else government can do on the subsidy, I feel that we should reach parity with internal combustion engine within next 3 to 5 years, at least on the total cost of ownership basis. And once we reach, that will be like the inflection point, and we can see the explosive growth in EVs thereafter.
Time for a break. On the other side, I will continue bringing you highlights of that panel discussion that we did with the biggest voices from the electric vehicle space in Bengaluru. To stay tuned, back in just a bit. Welcome back. You're with us here on Leaders of Tomorrow. Tonight on the show, bringing you the opportunities and challenges for entrepreneurs in the electric vehicle space. Do listen in to highlights of a panel discussion we did earlier. So we've been talking about the challenges all along, but I do want to talk about the opportunities for our viewers watching this. If they're a small, entrepreneur who's in the space or excited about the space, where are the opportunities? And first and foremost, given that each of you is an expert in perhaps a different vertical as far as the EV space is concerned, my question really is, how do you expand demand beyond India to go into Bharat? Where are the opportunities specifically in Tier 3, Tier 4? Is there a market right now? Is there an addressable market that any of you can talk about?
So let's look at a great market, 1.5 million e-rickshaws in our country. Yeah. No policy to start that off, no regulation, happened by itself. The guy earns more money than driving a diesel vehicle, and it happened just like that. That's a huge business, $1 billion business on an annual basis just from an energy point of view, besides we look at what we have vehicles. I do think if you get cost parity on areas or cost advantages, there is huge opportunities. And I think this is a great example of something that started by itself.
So this whole space is extremely wide at this point, and it's completely open. Now, whether it is charging, its innovation in BMSs and softwares and hardware and batteries and controllers, motors, you name it, and it's all wide open at this point because India doesn't really have that level of a supply chain. But if you look at, compared to IC engine, in IC engine, basically the technology, the IP for the engines, for example, it is rested with very few companies. So you couldn't really get access to it unless you did the level of R&D, which only very, very large companies could afford to do at that point. But now we are finding innovation which is coming here from the grassroots level. We are finding small companies, and I see it, or I'm seeing it all the time, small companies who've got this amazing, brilliant technology where they are, which larger companies are unable to catch up to right now or even innovate at that scale. So you've got individuals coming in with technologies which large companies have not been able to put together so far.
I would like to give one small example there. Earlier today I was meeting one of the startups and of course everyone is using right now lithium-ion technology for the batteries, but a girl doing her PhD told me that she's been working on a project where she's coming up with some technology which can use decomposed materials and having 10 times more productivity on the battery with the same price. Now, whether it will happen at the large scale or not, that's a different thing. But the fact is that kind of innovation is happening almost at the grassroots level.
Okay. So that was going to be my next question to this panel in terms of, are you happy with the kind of innovation that we're seeing in India? What perhaps is it going to take for us to see much more on a much larger scale? Access to manpower and skilled manpower, of course, is one big, challenge perhaps. How are you as entrepreneurs, how are you addressing that?
I see a lot of innovation on EV much more in India than I would say either China or US or Europe. Very specifically to India. For example, the largest fleet of employee commute is in this city, Bangalore. We have more than 1,000 cars running, picking up employees, going to office and come back. The largest tender of a government to buy 10,000 vehicles happened in this country. If you look at a startup which I met who has made a E2O into 1,000-kilometer lithium, or not lithium, aluminum air battery nano has happened in this city. The charging infrastructure, swapping, how many things are happening. It's amazing to see how many innovations are happening in this place. And as Naveen and others said, it's happening in India. If you see the amount of youngsters' interest to electric mobility and how many people ping me in LinkedIn is amazing.
We're running out of time and I have two quick questions that I definitely want to ask this panel. And the first is the access to talent, affordable talent that really understands this space. All of you are working with technologies that are being built for the future. You're talking about a space that is changing rapidly. Are you perhaps training extensively on the job for entrepreneurs who are watching this interview to say, it's really difficult for me to find the workforce that perhaps understands these technologies? Any advice you would have?
It is very difficult, but it's because it's a combination of mechatronics, hardware, software, batteries, robotics, all coming together. It's highly cross-domain, and so people need to be far more open about looking at multiple technologies. So no more you're a software engineer. You are an engineer who has to get a product done which happens to have software and hardware and everything else. But you're seeing some of the newer schools are doing robotics competitions and doing other things, and these kind of people are the right people who I think fit for the electric vehicle side. The other thing I think which is very important is when you look at the IT industry in the 90s when it took off, there was a lot of training available, you know. What we need is like a 3-month finishing school in all the schools for electric mobility. You want to get in there, you graduate, you spend 3 months, you learn about motors, this, that. You come into the industry aware of everything.
Is that something you're doing?
Well, I've been looking with a couple of universities and my alma mater to see if they can put something here and a few more. I think it's very essential to the country because if people have to come in as trained workforce, it's something the industry should put together with universities and try and see. And also the other part is it's highly dynamic. You can't have this coursework, but next year it's fully changed. So you need a dynamic process where you can keep upgradation of technology. I found a startup who's now doing online training programs for electric vehicles. I think you need a lot more like that so that there's a way that we can get large set of people up and trained in a very quick manner.
Okay, we've run out of time on this panel, and I very quickly want to get closing comments, and I will come to you first, Deepak, to understand. And I do know we spoke about this very briefly in terms of the opportunities to watch out for in 2019 for entrepreneurs in this space. But if there's one thing that you want to leave them with, what is that?
I see lots of opportunities, and maybe like it will take a long time, but the short answer would be because of the fast expansion of EVs, the whole supply chain and profit pool of the automobile segment is changing. So I see opportunities for the suppliers because new kinds of components are coming. I see opportunities for the software providers because of the telematics and other kind of functionality which is coming into a vehicle. I see opportunities, of course, for the OEMs to launch these new products and bring them to the market. And I see opportunity for mobility players to get into that segment. So I see opportunity across the value chain. Okay,
for everyone else on this panel, starting with Akash, perhaps the biggest challenge that you've had in your journey as an entrepreneur and what your learning has been from that. Talk to our viewers on that.
See, I think we started with a big challenge, and I would want to focus there. The biggest challenge is that if a person is riding in a car alone, I think the kind of pollution and the kind of infra that is being used off that road, I think that can be given to a lot more people in a country like ours where there are so many, people sitting. And the other challenge that I see is that if someone is actually can become an entrepreneur, if you can give him 2 wheels with a motor, I think that's another big opportunity that we saw, as a challenge which became an opportunity for us to solve, right? So I think, yeah, and the biggest challenge that we see for India is that if we now don't act to make cities more livable or sustainable, I think we should have done yesterday, but now's the time. And again,
Mahesh, Naveen, my question to you is, as entrepreneurs who are watching this interview, if they are to say, are there any synergies that they can have with businesses like yours, large established startups like yours, what would it be?
So I think there are plenty, I would say, because we are tying up with charging infrastructure players, we are tying up with fleet operators. If you look at what we have tied up for pretty long time, Olas, Ubers, Lithiums, Bhagirathis, Smarties, and plenty of things. I think the innovation will come from integrating the mobility ecosystem to a product and how we create what I would say threadbare, clean interaction between the customers and the mobility. This will come only by a platform, and that platform where all of us or stakeholders are put together and each of them play a vital role to get that mobility out. I think I would say that there is a huge opportunity for suppliers, operators, dealers, fleet players, OEMs, and all of them to put together. EV can become only a success, what we are talking, either 30% or 100%, only if all the stakeholders come together and create this future. It cannot happen by one of them alone just making noise. So all of them have to work together to make it happen.
Okay.
So coming from a 2-wheeler and a small 3-wheeler perspective, there are a tremendous amount of opportunities for any entrepreneurs to come in. Some of them are in the area of the technologies themselves. There is new technologies, whether it's IoT, whether it's telematics, which are coming in, it's the BMSs, how do you control the batteries, how do you extract the best out of the batteries. India, if you look at it from a market standpoint, is a very tough market. People demand a product which performs extremely well, yet are not willing to pay that kind of a pricing of what it would demand, what it would command because of the technologies that go in. So you've got to strike that balance. That balance is a very difficult one, and that's a challenging factor to do. Plus, how do you actually give people the product that they aspire to have? So they want the level of performance, the speed, the range, etc. And yet, how do you package the whole thing into a vehicle which makes economical sense for them and for you? Because technology exists. I mean, right now you can give the fastest vehicle on the road is actually electric. It's not IC. So technologies are all there. But how do you really blend the whole thing into a package, into a sellable proposition?
Sure.
In terms of opportunities, I mean, for two-wheelers, the charging infrastructure, for example, just the telematics that we have to put in on the vehicles, battery assembly, battery manufacturing, which is more expensive, but nevertheless, those opportunities do exist. Because what's going to happen is that the low-hanging fruit probably is the two-wheelers. Once we get enough mass of two-wheelers, the ecosystem starts to get created for other vehicles also to piggyback ride on that whole ecosystem.
Sure.
So it's very important to handle this delicately. It's very important to get in new innovations, low-cost innovations, grassroots level innovations. How do you make a vehicle rather than a capex? How do you make it into a opex, or how do you make it into a service rather than a capital expenditure?
Okay.
So those are the kind of things that will change this whole mobility.
We were tempted to squeeze what perhaps is a whole day conversation into 30 minutes, but gentlemen, thank you all very much for your time. Thank you to each of you for your perspective here on the show. All right, that's our show tonight. If you have any feedback for us, do let us know. leadersoftomorrow@timesgroup.com is our email ID. Reach us also on social media, Sunanda_J or LOT_ET Now on Twitter, Leaders of Tomorrow on ET Now on Facebook. Thanks for watching. Have a good night.